turning vague memory problems into speech therapy goals.
Are you a speech-language pathologist who assesses cognition? Let me ask you a question. How many times have patients told you that they want to improve their memory, but they can't give you specific examples? Now, this happens with my patients. I might ask, well, what do you want to improve about your memory? And sometimes they just shrug and say everything. And what a catch-22 that is, right? Because in order for us to help our patients, we need to know what specific problems they're having, but they can't think of examples because they have a memory problem. Now, if you're facing that problem, stick around because I'm going to share a handout and some tips. My name is Lisa Young. I'm a speech-language pathologist, and I created a 2-page checklist to help my patients and their families be more specific about their memory concerns. Why? The better we define the problem, the better we can assess and treat it in speech therapy. First, I'll describe the checklist. Then I'll share my best tips. This 2-sided checklist includes 54 common daily activities and skills. As speech pathologists, we are familiar with temporal orientation and how important that is for daily functioning, but maybe we're not as familiar with medication management as a skill area that SLPs can assist with. If you want more information about the SLP role in medication management, check out the links below. The next section is financial management, and again, this is an area that speech pathologists are probably pretty familiar with. It's important to remember that while all money-related activities are functional by definition, they are not all relevant or important to our patients. Using technology for communication and related tasks are very common goal areas for my patients, and these may involve the telephone, the computer, and the smartphone. Mail and office often go together. If my patient is having trouble reading or responding to their mail, they're probably also having trouble organizing their paperwork and finding important information in an efficient way. Flipping the checklist over, we see remembering information and learning and using new procedures. These are very common goal areas for my patients. The Finding My Way Around section is designed for people who live in an apartment complex or an assisted living facility. Wayfinding can be challenging for people who have a cognitive impairment, especially if they're relatively new to the building. And the last section that I have is having a conversation. This is also a very common skill area that I treat. So that's it for the checklist. Now I'm going to share my best tips. So first and foremost, I printed the checklist out and put it in a page protector, and it lives in my cognitive evaluation folder. So if I'm doing an interview with a patient and they're being too vague, I will pull this out and hand it to them, or I will read the categories and get their feedback. Sometimes I will have a talkative patient who is being too vague, but they have a family member present. And I will interrupt my patient briefly to hand the family member the checklist and have them look at it while I allow the patient to tell me their story in their own way. Now, ideally, I want to find out at least one specific problem that my patient is having before I do my assessment, because that helps me pick out the best assessment tool. Also, going through the worksheet with the patient and family gives me insight into their awareness and their priorities. Being specific about the problem also makes it much easier to write the goal. Unfortunately, this doesn't always happen. Sometimes I just don't have time to assess cognition during the first visit. Or maybe my patient is too vague, but there's no family member present to look at the checklist. And sometimes the family is there, but they can't think of specific problems right on the spot. So in any of those cases, I'll often leave the checklist behind for the patient or their family to look at before I come back. This checklist helps me quite a bit, and I think it might help you too. Try it out for yourself. The link is below. And if you want access to more than 100 clinician cheat sheets and patient handouts, join my free newsletter. Thanks for watching.